Alright, I'm making another video. Yay, me. Cool, whatever. Alright, so I've been a gamer for as long as I can remember. It's something that actually my mom got me started on, and over the years, I've seen the hobby of gaming evolve in many different ways. One thing I haven't seen evolve as much through the years is the price. $50 and $60 for a game has pretty much been the standard for going on, what, 3 decades now? So I have to ask the question, is this still a reasonable price? So, of course, I'm going to immediately get people saying that I'm some kind of corporate shill or whatever, blah, blah, blah. In which case, I'm just going to preempt any complaints and screaming by saying how little of a fuck I give. I give zero of the fucks. Also, because I like to geek out about things, you'll get to hear the sound of my annoying voice go off on tangents about things that may or may not be related to the subject matter and may or may not interest you. If you don't like that either, oh well. So, why am I making this video? Well, aside from why the fuck not, I've really just been disappointed with the games in general for a few years now. It's even gotten to the point where I'm starting to notice other people just overly dissatisfied with the quality of games recently. Well, I want them to be better. However, if you want to change the world, then you got to do it one person at a time, starting with yourself. So the things I'm going to be talking about in this video are things that I actually have some guilt in either complaining about or just not even thinking about when it comes to the amount of money that I pay for a game. Hopefully, it'll inspire some introspection on a massive scale that will allow us to once again be able to look forward to the future games and even possibly other things like movies and stuff, but yeah, doubtful. I really just expect the bin here to be overflowing. But what the hell, you never know unless you try, right? Also, before I begin, I just want to point out that I'm going to be looking at this without taking into consideration the oligarchical aspect that has made its way into gaming recently as well. You know, the whole like investors taking over everything, corporate speak and government controls and censorship and all that kind of stuff. So just keep that in mind. But I will start by talking about something that I'm sure is every gamer's everywhere most favoritist topic: economics. Well, specifically, something you're probably familiar about: inflation. Now, you'll hear the word inflation used in a few different ways, but the most accurate definition is to increase the supply of something. Money is a resource, and like all of the resources, the more of it there is, the less value it has. So when prices go up, it's not that the object you're buying becomes more expensive. It's the more likely scenario that the currency of your country has become less valuable because the supply has increased. If we look at the currency of my country, the United States, the dollar, well, as best as I can tell, the monetary base, meaning how much money total there was in that particular currency, in 2008 was about $800 billion. Since then, the Federal Reserve has been printing up a metric fuck ton of money. And now there are other factors that come into play here, but based on this alone, I don't think you have a strong argument to say that the price of games should never have changed. I mean, shit, I pay almost twice as much for food now as I did 10 years ago, and food is a necessity. Also, 10 years ago I was married, so let all that sink in. So, what does it do when something like games aren't bringing in the money that companies need to even break even, let alone turn a profit? Well, you get this. Games are one of many art forms, but any art form can only be created if there are the resources there to create it. After all, let's not forget what happened to the company that made LA Noire. So, if companies aren't bringing in an adjusted amount that scales with inflation, what winds up happening? Well, a lot of what we heard lately are stories of people who work in places and then go through the crunch period. I've heard people say that they want to call it different things, but I'll just call it a crunch period for simplicity. Or you also get places that will get people fresh out of school and pay them dirt cheap for designers, developers in general. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying that if we give companies more money or if we're willing to pay more money, that they'll automatically just pay their employees better. That's about as fucking idiotic as the hypothesis of trickle-down economics. But what I am saying is that we can't really expect companies to pay their employees a decent wage if we're not going to pay them a decent price for the product. So wages are going to go up in time. Wages are going to go up with the times. If we want that to happen, then we got to expect the prices to go up with the times as well. So you see this in other things, right? So like some food manufacturer will say, "Oh, well, we're taking 10% out of such and such out of our product," and then like fucking morons for whatever reason, they'll say, "Oh, we're doing it for the health of our customers." I've never really ever heard companies say, "Yeah, we're just doing it because that's how we're going to deal with inflation." But I'm sure that means nothing. Well, what can you do to increase your income then? Well, you can widen your audience. I mean, let's look at it this way. When I was a kid and you go in the arcade, I typically see girls playing things like Miss Pac-Man and Centipede, guys playing stuff like Galaga and Sprint Rally, and everyone playing stuff like Dig Dug. Then there was also my mom, who I nicknamed Tommy. Kudos to you if you get the reference. When gaming left the mainstream because of the Atari crash, you had PC for the more in-depth games, Nintendo for the family games, and Sega for mainly sports games and the stuff that Nintendo wouldn't allow. Sega also had one of my favorite real-time strategies of all time, Warrior of Rome 2. God, I missed that game. It was the single most elegant RTS of all RTSs, in my opinion. Yeah, okay. Going back to the point, when Xbox came out, you saw gaming become more of a mainstream thing again. And this was both good and bad. The bad thing about things going mainstream is that you no longer mainly have people who are genuinely interested in the hobby as it is, but instead you have a lot more arrogant assholes that want everything to be tailored to them. The good thing is that it probably allowed gaming to survive. The wider audience allows for more revenue from selling games at the same price. Well, when that isn't enough to suffice anymore, you got to make the audience even wider, which is why we now have more games that cater to either the least offended denominator or to some propagandized agenda. So here's why I go off on another tangent because of the ignorance of a lot of gamers with the line of "keep politics out of gaming." Okay, that's impossible. The very nature of the word political means participating in the establishment of a system of rule. So whether you're following the rules, ignoring someone else's rules, or having a rule that says there are no rules, you're being political. You cannot not be political. Telling gaming companies to keep politics out of gaming is, by its very nature, a political action. Getting the idea? So how is somebody who actually understands what this means going to react when you're saying stuff like this? Personally, if it were me, I just think that you are an idiot who doesn't know what the fuck they want. You don't see a lot of what I call Socratic narratives anymore because I want to be cool and make up terms too, just like everybody. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, Socrates was this ancient Greek philosopher that, as the story goes, was eventually put to death because people didn't like him asking so many questions. But you see, there's specific ways to ask questions. A lot of people like to ask loaded questions, like, "Oh, do you not see how not voting for so and so is bad?" And that's a loaded question. The problem with a question like this is that you're trying to get a specific answer from a person. What Socrates did was either constantly ask open-ended questions or questions with the roles reversed. Like I tell my students, if you ever want to find out how full of shit someone is, there's really only two words you ever got to ask. Why? How? So let me give you a couple examples of things I believe Socrates would would say to modern examples. So let's pick let's be even here. So on one side, let's pick this whole idea of government should stay out of the way of business, right? So if Socrates were alive today, I'd expect him to say something like, okay, so you want the institution that already has power over the market and is controlled equally by every one of its voting citizens to relinquish that power so that the vacuum can be filled by some entity that has accountability to and is influenced only by a smaller portion of the populace. Ponder that one for a second. And then there's the more obvious one that people still ask today. Let's use the hashtag believe all women. You'd ask something like, so I'm supposed to believe you without any proof that somebody did something bad to you? Well, if so, am I supposed to believe a woman who says you did something bad to her without any proof? So, reading him, I got the impression that he really went out of his way to not take anything for granted, which is something that's really guaranteed to piss everyone off. So, of course, this is something that I've personally adopted because people really don't have a clue what they're actually saying half the time, anyways. They're just repeating things that they've heard and just don't analyze what they say. They just take it for granted, which is part of why I'm making this video. Also, anyone who can't put as much effort into arguing for an unfavorable outcome as much as they would a favorable one makes themselves little more than a puppet. So yeah, this kind of thinking you don't see much of anymore, especially in games and media. When it comes to stories, most hobbyist gamers, at least ones that I know, prefer a variety of stories like these, so what I call Socratic narratives. You also have the philosophical Kobayashi Marus, and really just the earnest stories of people's trials and tribulations. But this is a narrow audience compared to what could be reached by all these milled out plot lines that we just see over and over again. Hey, friends are great. That's about it. Also, at the same time, just to put it out there, whoever thought it was a good idea to throw cutscenes in Blaster Master Zero should rethink things. I mean, I just want to shoot stuff and not have the pace interrupted by some story, my dude. It's like, all right, going. All right, stop. What the fuck? Okay, spam the button. Okay, yeah, I can play the game again. Not every game needs a story. Anyways, the reality is that if you can't appeal to enough people with the game you've made to cover your expenses, LA Noire. Well, another thing you can do is just make an incomplete game. Now, this isn't something that's really new. We've had like early access and whatnot. But even in the past, you've had it. It's just harder to get away with now. Back in the day, you had games like Smash TV, and I believe it was Commando. There was a Commando PC game, or I don't know, something based off a movie Arnold Schwarzenegger was in. But they were released, and there was no ending programmed in. So yeah. Now you have this post-launch revenue model where the development is done on sales after the fact. And this is, one thing you've seen with early access and things like examples you see on your screen where, okay, yeah, we're going to get all of it in there, but we just need money from sales in order to be able to do it. And we'll just leave that part out now because people probably don't want to hear it. But they use the revenue from the games after they launch to add in the features, fix the bugs, and because they just didn't have the budget for it earlier. Now, I'm not saying that I know this for a fact, but it is pretty safe to say that that's what's going on based on all the evidence. You also have companies that just like to chop up the game into many pieces and sell them all as DLC after the launch. Of course, let's not forget about in-game advertising. And last of all that I can think of, but certainly not least, the loot boxes and microtransactions. Now, look, it's easy to say that greed is the motivator for all of these things. And sure, there's a bunch of greed out there. But we have to ask the question, is it always greed? right? How much of it is just companies trying to stay afloat? Again, LA Noire. Realistically, the closer you get to the proposition of the motivation being all greed and nothing else, the more statistically unlikely your scenario becomes. So, just putting some numbers out there. Like I said, I want better games. And personally, having thought this through for a while now, I wouldn't say it's unreasonable for a company to ask, I don't know what. Let's pick a number. $120 for a game? But provided that they give me a fully flushed out product, it isn't some appeal to everyone trash and doesn't have that, oh, it's only a license you can use and you have to agree to these terms of service. Yeah, none of that fucking crap. If they gave me a solid 60-hour experience based off $120 that I spent, well, that's $2 an hour for entertainment. Good entertainment. You know what? That really ain't a bad value. And now we come to the end of the video. Have fun putting all your complaints in the comments section that I'm not going to read because I don't give a shit. But on the other hand, if you did like the video, well, I still don't give a shit. Also, if you want to see more stuff like this video, well, just shit in one hand and wish in the other and see which one fills up first because this is not stuff I like to do on the regular. Bye.